Hello, hello, and welcome to Brandlive's bi-weekly web series. It's a new day in the studio. We're changing it up, keeping it fresh. Of course, we're still talking with amazing thought leaders, doers, and makers in the world of webinars. We're still answering your questions in the live Q&A immediately after, but we've got so much more in store for you today. Let's get into it. I'm your host, Kyle Janis, and this is the Midday Show. What's the why behind all the changes? Because video content and how we consume it is always changing. Because our audiences demand more, and for webinars that keep them watching, it's gotta stay fresh. It's about breaking up content into tight, digestible segments. The immediacy of social media with the storytelling of Hollywood, where information matters as much as the emotion, and it all comes in succinct, bite-sized bits. But how do we go from that webinar 1.0, look at the laptop webcam, share screen, and go live, to telling inspired, engaging stories? What is a run of show? And how do we use it to break that story into digestible segments? And is there really a benefit to pre-recording content? For those answers and more, we've got the perfect guest on our show today, master storyteller and Brandlive's video and motion graphics editor, Tyler Blume. Tyler, welcome to the Midday Show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. Usually I'm the one behind the computer editing this, so
you're making
weird
it look
to be
good.
In front of it.
Well, we really appreciate you getting out from behind the laptop and here in the studio, because we definitely have a lot to learn from you today. But before we dive in, I'd love to just learn a bit about you. And so let's get into just the journey that ultimately brought you to Brandlive. Were you always into film and TV?
Yeah, growing up, I always there was something interesting about having a camera, and I was super lucky in high school. My school had like a whole video program, a whole news program and everything. Then it quickly turned into oh, I could actually make money doing something like this. So then in my high school, I started working with the football team all the time, doing their sports video stuff. And then that's what led me to Portland State. And then I started doing sports broadcasting at Portland State. And then you can kind of start to see the future trajectory of then because I was at Portland State doing sports, I quickly got picked up by NBC Sports afterwards.
No way. Tell me about NBC Sports. What was that like?
Yeah, so I started off as a assistant editor at NBC Sports. Was there for about 4 years, and towards the end of my time there, I started being an editor and producer, and was editing and producing a nightly talk show that was an hour long, that was a good mix of sports and culture, and we were trying to give something to the Portland sports market that didn't really exist.
Wait, so nightly 5 days a week?
Yeah, so it started off 5 days a week, and then it quickly moved into 3 days a week because we started to get other shows based off the programming that was happening. And then once we got to that 3 days a week, then the crew started to get a little smaller, and then we had to start getting a little bit more creative with how we were making each of our episodes during the week.
It sounds like you're just wearing more hats at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so not being a sports person, how does the world of sports then shape your understanding of building a narrative?
The interesting part of doing sports talk radio and sports TV is that you can only talk about stats for so long and people are going to start to get bored. When the hosts are speaking about the game, a lot of the times they're trying to tell you the story of the game. So there's always a beginning, middle, and end of the game. And I think when you're watching the sport, you don't really realize that. But then as you are talking about the sport, it starts to become pretty apparent of who started off really well, and then where did they go, and decisions being made causing the drama in the game, and that kind of form really lends to storytelling, where each game, that by the mid halftime area, you kind of have an idea of where that story's going to be, because we would be doing shows like post-game shows, and you'd have to start working on that content for that show around halftime, because you're going to be on air 15 minutes after the game ends.
Wow, that's an insane turnaround.
Yeah, exactly.
How did you enjoy being in the producer chair?
I really enjoyed it, actually. I think it was a really fun way to mix kind of what I enjoyed with live production and what I enjoyed with post-production. My brain is I work very well with like puzzles almost. And because of the way you produce a TV show, you have your different segments and you're kind of putting those puzzle pieces together to make it all work. And then you're working with your crew, so then you have all of those pieces you're working with. And then vice versa with editing, it's kind of that same thing where I get this huge amount of footage and then I have to start paring it down and start figuring out different ways that I can put those puzzle pieces together to like tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, so, and you're doing this with like 4 people for a nightly show, which totally goes against everything I think about a Hollywood set. Like I'm picturing just like all the people, all the things, all the big crew, but it's small folks turning around a nightly show.
Yeah, and what really, like in a perfect world, yes, you would love this big crew, but sometimes it's just not feasible for what you're working on. And towards like the end of where I was at with my show, we would have basically a cameraman, a TD, myself, and then every once in a while, and we would have the host actually. So that was the 4 people that would be running the show. And we would really have to start leaning in onto the things that we knew. So we would kind of have a skeleton for each show. And with that skeleton, we would have certain parts of the show that would be segmented out. So we would know like every show we're going to start with this specific segment, every show we're going to end with this segment. And then we try to keep those segments broad enough so that depending on what we're talking about, we can kind of squeeze it into those segment ideas. And those segments can be anything from just a style of the way that you're delivering the information, or those could be a fun little game that we're doing with a guest, or it could be anything from like just a quick little break from the show and it's a fully pre-recorded deep dive into like a small thing.
And I love we've got you here because that's exactly what we're going to get into is talking about segments in a show. And I'm excited to dive in right after this break. Hello, this is Brandon Lively reporting for BLTV with some breaking news. We are getting confirmation that Brandlive will be featured at South by Southwest this year. I'm with Brandlive Director of Marketing, Whitney Krause, for more details. Whitney, thank you so much for joining me.
Anytime, Brandon.
Now, Whitney, what can you tell us about Brandlive's involvement in South by Southwest this year?
All the rumors are true. We will be exhibiting at South by Southwest Expo March 9th through 12th at booth 939.
Amazing. Now, for folks going to South by this year, what can they expect from the Brandlive experience?
We'll be producing a studio environment where guests can play with our programs, our platform, and our production software green room.
Amazing. Any other highlights to the Brandlive showing there at South by Southwest?
Yes, absolutely. This is also breaking news. We are launching something that we're calling Style Packs, and this will be the first opportunity for people on the ground to play with our new tools.
Fascinating. Now, is there any teaser that you can offer about Style Packs at this time?
At this time, I can tell you that they are professionally designed creative assets in which video producers can use and alter them to match their brand and their show to make sure that they look their best on camera.
Well, lucky folks at South by. Now, is this the only event that Brandlive is featuring at here in the near future?
I am so glad you asked. We are actually in Scottsdale, Arizona right now at B2B Marketing Exchange at booth 212.
Fantastic. Well, Whitney, it sounds like you and Brandlive are having a busy month. Thank you so much for your time. Folks, catch Brandlive at B2B MX in Scottsdale this week and at South by Southwest in early March. For now, I'm Brandon Lively reporting for BLTV. Now back to you in the studio. Welcome back to the Midday Show. We've got Tyler Blume in the studio, Brandlive Editor, to talk to us about how segments and other editing tools to make your shows more engaging. Tyler, getting into it, and as you were talking before the break about segments, Can you, in a nutshell, what is the big power behind segments? Like, why should we all love them?
Segments are great for a lot of different things, but the main reason why I really love segments is because it allows your brain to kind of reset, and you're not looking at the same thing for 10 to 15 minutes straight. I think you'll hear with a lot of our brand marketing here at Brandlive that you're competing against a lot of things, and there's a lot of noise out there. And I think one of the easiest ways to compete against that noise is to make your information that you're delivering into bite size, easier to kind of swallow.
Yeah, digestible. Totally.
Digestible, exactly.
Okay, so instead of one long run-on sentence, as a monologuer myself, we go bit by bit, and we're stringing these little bits together, and essentially that becomes the structure of your show.
Exactly. Another great thing with segments is it allows you to, because it's already pre-bite size, it allows you to be able to quickly take something out of your full show and be able to put it onto social media or have another use out of it. So say we have this Ask the Expert section, and maybe we don't want to have people watch the full 20 minutes, but we have a very clean in and out because we have that segment. So then it allows us to just quickly put that segment up online, and then people can quickly consume it. So you're getting more content from your recordings other than just that webinar.
And just by the nature of it being packaged into a segment, it already has a kind of natural start and conclusion that makes it already something tight that can be repurposed in other spaces.
Yep, and most of the time we like to open up those segments with a segment card. So then you open up with your segment card that you already have pre-baked in, and then you just put a nice call to action at the very end.
So then talk to me, like, I've got these bits of a segment, I'm making them into a show. Is that then where, like, is that the run of show, is like the kind of sequence of those segments?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Actually, I have the run of show for this show, and I think this is a great way to kind of explain how a run of show works. Depending on what show you are running, your run of show can vary. You can have very intense run of shows. If your show is completely live, a lot of the times you will see durations are much more important, cues are much more important. But for something like this, where we're kind of pre-recording in the beginning, and then we are going to have the live moment at the end, this allows us to kind of just know the gist of where our show is going, and it allows us to make sure it's almost like a checklist. So when we are doing pre-records, it's like, okay, have we done the show open? Have we done the cold open? And it allows you to kind of keep track of what's going on.
It's like the game plan for the whole show, and you're making sure not only are you hitting all the parts, but that everyone's going in the same direction. Totally makes sense. When does run of show come into that show build process?
Yeah, I think the run of show is going to be something that's always a living thing. It will be changing all the way up until you hit that live show. A guest may drop out, or a segment might need to change based off some new information that's coming in. When you're thinking about developing that run of show, I think it's something that you can start from the very beginning. It can kind of be your rough draft for how you think your webinar is going to go. So you're kind of laying out, like, these are the main things that we know we want to hit, and these are how we're going to achieve it. And then once you have these segment ideas, then you can start diving into what that segment is. So if you look at this run of show, if you're looking at the opening interview, it's a very broad idea, but it lets us know that we're going to have an opening interview where we're going to get to know the guest. Mm-hmm. And then that allows you as the presenter to then be like, okay, I need to start coming up with some questions that will help with this opening interview segment.
And so let's get into, like, even here, pre-record versus live. What are the benefits of doing pre-record versus doing live? Like, why would one, like, incorporate those kind of elements into a show? Yeah,
I think a lot of people, for some reason, are afraid of pre-recording because they're worried about it being a little too canned. But the thing is if you treat that pre-record like a live moment, then you don't really have to worry about that too much. And the benefit of a pre-record is that you can retake it if you need to. So say one of your guests mess up, or you have a weird internet connection issue, then it allows you to quickly be able to be like, okay, let's reset this, and then make sure you're getting that message out that you want. It allows you to control your intention for the messaging that you're trying to deliver to your audience. And the benefits of pre-recorded and live, and I would say there are some benefits to live where you know you're in the moment and you have to get it done. And there's that kind of spark that comes from it where people, you can tell
There's definitely an energy to it.
Yeah, there's an energy to a live segment that people love. And you can match that in a pre-recorded segment. But I think the cons almost outweigh the benefits most times when you're looking at those pre-records.
The obvious choice then for most important messagings that you want to have the most control over is to go pre-record to ensure that you're not only on message, but that it's delivered in the best way possible. But what are some of those strategies to keeping the pre-recorded content from feeling scripted or stale?
Yeah, I think it's really knowing what you want to talk about and knowing kind of what the takeaways are. I think staying away from, I need to say this exact phrasing for this to work, is almost detrimental. I think a lot of the times it's more, this is the intent I want the audience to get from this. And another great thing with pre-records is that it allows you to have that content in hand before that webinar is live. And one of the great benefits with that is then it allows you to actually be able to promote that webinar with content from the webinar. So you can give quick little sound bites to get people really interested in your in the webinar that you're producing. And it's just a very simple, easy way to make that content.
Like a little teaser, a little trailer like for the movie.
Perfect.
Neat. So diving in a bit more now to the Brandlive tools, like we recently had Eli on who was talking about Green Room, Brandlive's webinar production tool. And in Green Room already, it offers that run of show, that storyboard, and abilities to do pre-recorded all in one. But I know that you as editor are a big fan of the ISO feature that Green Room offers. Can you elaborate a bit more about, A, what exactly is ISO? And from that editor's perspective, why is it something that you really value so much?
So first part of that question, the show board on the bottom that you're speaking of, I think it is a great way, especially when you have something pre-recorded like this, where you have multiple elements that are going to be pre-recorded. It's a great way for someone to be able to quickly look and make sure that it's very obvious where everything is. So you can quickly look at a glance and see, okay, I have my show opening here. I have the intro here. I have the guest coming in here. And it's an easy way for you to look quickly at your show and make sure that you're going to go off without a hitch. And then part two, the ISO is something that I was super excited about when I started here, because as everybody knows, the product at Brandlive is always ever changing. And it was something that we didn't have, and I was one of the people here championing it, saying this is something we really could benefit from. And the greatness about it is, so an ISO recording, for people who don't know about it, an ISO recording is the isolated feed. So in this kind of world, it would be this camera is my ISO, and then this camera would be his ISO. And it is just the feed of that person. So when you think about it in the Green Room perspective, when you have people coming into the canvas, you can have multiple people on the canvas.
Yeah, you got like a two up, you've got person talking to person.
Correct.
Yeah.
But the greatness behind Green Room is that we can isolate each of those recordings and be able to download those, so that, say, maybe you accidentally cut too quickly to a guest, or maybe a kid walks in and starts screaming for mommy or daddy, then it allows you to be able to go in, add that ISO in, and it gives you that flexibility you need to edit and to make sure that you can kind of hide the fact that you had an issue.
So not from editing land, but like with the ISO, it's not only am I able to leverage and use what's being shown on the screen, but in addition to that as a video component that you as the editor get to manipulate, you also then have two separate video files, feeds for lack of a better, but for each of those presenters for whatever their camera had captured. So you've almost got, like in this instance of a 2-up, there's 3 separate video files that you're then able to use as an editor to manipulate in that whatever post-production content that you want, whether it's a sizzle reel or you're just cleaning up the show for an on-demand. Like, am I?
Yeah, 100%. And I think another word that kind of jumps to mind is a jump cut. And a jump cut is usually if you are cutting something from one thing to another and there isn't a big enough change, so your eyes instantly pick up. So say we're in a medium shot with you and you're giving your opening monologue and then you accidentally mess up your opening monologue.
It has happened.
Exactly. And when we want to fix that, we can't really just cut it and then put you there, because then it'll be obvious in our eyes that something has changed.
Oh, it's that weird, like, you can definitely see it, like, you follow some YouTube talking head.
Exactly.
And there's just that quick jump of
Exactly.
like, your shoulder wasn't over there.
Yes.
Okay.
And so what we like to do here at Brandlive is use those ISO recordings to be able to hide those moments, to make sure that when you are pre-recording something, that audience doesn't really know that there was a mistake there, because we have the ability to cut to that single or to cut to a 2-up.
Because you've got more video content that you can manipulate.
Exactly.
To then create a cohesive.
Exactly.
flow
And the other great part with ISOs too is we live in a world of social media, and it gives you an easy way to have that full screen feed to make that social media content. So you're able to get more than just your webinar out of these recordings. You're able to get lots of social content, and it gives you full control over what you're putting out online as well.
Okay, so to recap, because I know that we've covered a lot today, and I really appreciate you joining and a lot of the input that you offered, but kind of just to put it all together in a nutshell, to make shows more engaging, break down your content from a long monologue into easily digestible segments. Manage that sequence of segments that then becomes the whole show in something like a run of show. And in considering the content for those segments, leveraging pre-recorded allows the greatest level of control over those core messaging moments. And then to tie it all up, a tool like Greenroom that enables you to not only capture the on-canvas content, but each individual video feed as its own separate file, then allows the greatest manipulation for an editor when kind of crafting those pre-recorded segments to cover up, a flubbed line, or just to keep it dynamic by changing angles and otherwise.
Yeah, exactly.
It's definitely a lot, but I think this is really, really valuable. Tyler, really grateful. Thank you so much for joining us on the Midday Show.
Thanks for having me.
We're not quite through with you yet. We've got one more thing, and we'll be right back after this.
Want to make your videos more dynamic and engaging? Shooting with multiple cameras is key. Think about it. One camera can only capture one angle. Multiple cameras allow you to show different perspectives simultaneously, making your videos more visually interesting. This means more engaging content for your viewers, whether it's capturing the energy of a live event or adding depth to a simple interview. Multiple cameras offer great flexibility in editing, giving you more creative control and a smoother, more professional final product. Ultimately, multiple cameras elevate your videos, capturing the attention and leaving a lasting impression.
Welcome back, everyone. Tyler, thank you again so much for joining us in the Midday Show. This has been a really, really awesome episode. Before we let you go, we ask every guest to take the hot seat, 5 rapid-fire questions. You down?
I know. Yep, I'm down.
I mean, yeah, you've edited a few of these, so you know the drill. You know the drill. Okay, so coming at you, question 1.
Yes.
I hear that you're quite the gym buff. Now, I don't know about you, but I call this my tricep because it tries to lift heavy things but can't. So for those physically disinclined, help us out. What's your weekly routine?
Oh boy. Actually, it's kind of been changing up recently. I have been really leaning into the class realm, so I like to do classes. So I've been doing a couple cycling classes a week. I like to do Barry's classes every once in a while, and I'm actually on the rugby team, so I practice once or twice a week with the rugby team.
Actually, fun fact. Segue to question 2. Being on the rugby team, how very international of you. What was the initial attraction to what I assume is a very high contact sport? And then be honest, like Is your team any good?
Actually, so that's a loaded question, but you're trying to get me in trouble with my team or something.
Never.
What drew me to the rugby team, actually, here in Portland, we have a all-inclusive team, so anybody's allowed to play from any skill level, any walk of life, any gender.
That's awesome.
And it's a very inclusive space. And one of the things that I've always felt with sports growing up was it never always felt inclusive growing up. And it was kind of the first time I was able to play on a team and feel like, oh, this is, like, there is a way to have sports where you're not always being, like, super negative with each other, and you can kind of build up with each other.
And then beat each other up on the rugby pitch.
Exactly. And that's the fun part about it is, yes, it gets competitive on the field, but then afterwards, rugby players become instant friends afterwards. So your enemy's on the field, and you go grab a drink afterwards and talk about how you survived another match.
Follow up, what is the name of the team?
We are the Portland Lumberjacks.
How very befitting of
Yes,
Portland
yes.
brand. I love that. I love that it's way more than a sport. It really feels like a community.
Exactly.
Awesome.
That's what kind of drew me to it. It was community first and then sport kind of second.
Well, for what it's worth, best of luck to your team
Yes.
in, I don't know, whatever season. But moving on, question 3. I know that you're a big music fan. As this weather starts to turn warmer and we're all setting our sights on sunnier days, what is the reliable go-to from the past that needs to make a comeback and wake us up from the winter hibernation?
Ooh, and from the past, that really changes up the answer. When I think like summertime, I think of like, it makes me think of like Twirl, the event that kind of goes on here in Portland, and disco-y vibes. So I'm very much like, let's bring back Jessie Ware, let's bring back Donna Summer, like let's have like a nice flowy fun.
I'm into it. Disco summer coming up.
Exactly.
All right, so these are the 2 that we ask everybody. What is the title of your webinar series that has everyone binging all the way through?
Ooh. I think my title would be Behind the Cut. And I think it would be kind of a deep dive into why cuts work. Because one of the big things as an editor is you don't want your work to be seen, because if it's being seen, then that means something went wrong. So each cut is very intentional on how it's done, and it's kind of getting into that idea of why you have that intention. Bringing up intention.
I would that is what we're all about here. I would totally watch that, because I definitely feel like it's one of those where we're always consuming it, we're always seeing it, but we're never aware of it. And so then to kind of peel back a bit and really talk about the intention behind how that shot or what shot and the manipulation of, I would imagine be very eye-opening. So consider me your first subscriber.
And it's similar to like how Maka deep dive into the graphics, where it's like it's something you see all the time, but you don't really know why it is that way, and that's
My eyes are still buzzing from her examples.
Oh my lord, yes. Very bright.
And then last question. If you could rebrand webinars, what would be the new IT term we're all calling them?
Oof. I don't know if I would rebrand the name, but I may change the perspective of what a webinar can be. I think sometimes we limit ourselves because we think it's a webinar, so it's let's put this person in a box next to a slide, and that's what a webinar is going to be. I think Brandlive does a great job of showing you what webinars could be, and I don't think a name needs to change for that to be a thing. I think it's just when you're making that webinar, set your sights for something higher, and I think you can easily hit that mark, especially when you are intentionally thinking about how.
Viva la webinar! I'm in. Long live the webinar. And that's what we're doing here at the Midday Show. We're making webinars cool again. Well, Tyler, this has been phenomenal. You survived the hot seat and offered a phenomenal episode. Thank you so much for joining today. And thank you all for watching. Now stick around. Tyler and I will be in the live Q&A coming up next.
What is up, Tyler? Oh my gosh, thank you for such a fun episode and kicking off this whole new format.
Of course, yeah, it was super fun to try to figure out how to change it up with you, and I think it turned out well.
Yeah, and I want to just be super transparent. Like, this whole new concept was definitely a collab with our Brandlive Editor. and being able to bounce ideas off of you and how to create greater engagement and where to create those segments was a lot of help. So I appreciate just being able to leverage your expertise in elevating our show. And just, yeah, huge thank you, huge kudos is what I want to give.
Yeah, totally. And it's kind of a team effort. You really have to try to talk everybody into it and be like, look, I realize this is going to be a little bit more work, but the benefit we're going to get out of this is totally worth all the work that we're going to put into it.
Well, I definitely think that, every episode bigger, better. And I think this marks a big pivot for I think, midday engagement, let's give the people what they want.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, now we have so many little clips that we can use online for everybody to see. And it'll be interesting to see how people react to all the different moments.
Well, we're certainly giving them segments and variety and fun, but we're also giving them an opportunity to get some of their questions answered live. And I know that we both got busy days ahead, so if it's all right with you, we won't have time for all of the questions that we got, but we did get a couple cool ones that I do want to hit. Tyler, the first one that I really like: can you have too many segments in a show?
I don't know if you can have too many segments. Obviously, like if you're going segment to segment to segment overall, it could get a little annoying. But I think over an hour, you can probably have a decent amount of segments and it's not going to be too overwhelming.
And this, I think, ties in well and might help to answer that first question. But in general, what is the ideal length of a segment?
Yeah, totally. I think anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes. It really depends on your content. So if you look at the show that just happened, when we were getting to know the guests, since that's not really the main meat of the show, we kind of tried to keep it around 5 minutes because the goal is to just establish who this person is. And then that second segment was much longer, 10 minutes, and that's kind of the meat of the show, and that's where people are going to be getting their information. So I think it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish with that segment. But anywhere from that 5 to 10 minute range is probably a good call.
Cool. And so, yeah, so then that would make sense that like if I'm in a half an hour show, I'd be looking at 3 to 6 segments using that kind of 5 to 10 minute length factor. So that's awesome. Pivoting a bit, last question that we've just got time for, but I do think that it's a good one and relevant. Do ISOs only make sense for pre-recording, or are they relevant when going live?
Yeah, I would say obviously they're great for pre-records, but in a live mode, it allows you to go back and grab content from your show that you've already created, to make social content from it, to make other webinars with it if you want to re-air stuff in the future. It gives you that full control over each element. So say we're looking at this interview right now and we wanted to reuse parts of it. We could go in, download the ISOs, and have a full screen response of me instead of having just this 2-box look, and be able to post that directly to social media. So it's kind of a good, easy way to just have extra content and be able to manipulate it in any way you would want to.
So to help myself clarify, with ISOs, if I'm filming live, it's not necessarily the ISO recording because it's more just I'm on camera 1 or I'm on camera 2. And so it is just the switch of those cameras while doing a live show, but it is then after everything that cam 1 caught, everything that cam 2 caught as feeds that I then can manipulate after the show's concluded and then splice it, mix it, use it, post it. What am I, a Daft Punk song?
Exactly.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. And I know that we got other questions. Thank you guys so much for all the great responses. But I also know that in bringing more content, more fun, more segments, the show ran a little longer than our usual goal of 30 minutes. So certainly want to let folks get back to the workday. Tyler, you included. Thanks so much for kicking off the new format and for being just a part of another really great episode.
Of course, thanks. Yeah, it was really fun collaborating and changing it up and having a good conversation.
Well, I'll have more things on your editing desk here soon. So thank you for that in advance. And for everyone out there watching, thanks you guys so much for being a part of the Midday Show crowd. It makes it so much fun to be able to put this stuff together for you guys. We are back with another episode of the Midday Show coming March 11th. We've got the VP of Product, Will Clancy, to talk about some fun, exciting things that are possible outside of the webinar world on the Brandlive platform and suite of tools. For now, Tyler, have a beautiful day, and everyone out there, thanks so much for watching.